Hello and welcome. We're going to be watching and talking about today the 1973 film of the National Health. I am Nick Pinkerton, your interlocutor and film critic uh, at large, and I am joined here by the man, the myth, the legend,
Jim Dale.
who was in both the stage and screen version of the National Health, and who will be able to throw some light on both productions. I wanted to start at the very beginning. When did this play first cross your desk?
I had been invited by the director, Frank Dunlop, who had just formed a young company called Pop Theatre, popular theatre with popular people at popular prices. And we did the Edinburgh Festival for a couple of years. And Frank asked me if I'd like to do a small play called Scapino by Moliere, written 300 years ago. And of course, I jumped at that, and it was very, very physical. And it also meant I was talking to the audience as well. And the result of that was when we brought it to London, just for a short season, Laurence Olivier came to see it one or two times, and then made mention to Frank that there was a play by Peter Nichols that was destined to be done at the National Theatre, and one of the leading actors was a ward orderly who actually not only acted in the play, but also turned to the audience on many occasions and just talked to them like a comedian from music hall. And of course, I'd had 2.5 to 3 years experience as a stand-up comic prior to being invited to join Frank Dunlop's company. So with that in mind, I was invited to join the National Theatre just to play that one role of Barnet. And the result of that was that I stayed on playing leading roles in, I think, another 5 or 6 productions over the next 2 years.
And to double back a bit, you'd had experience as a stand-up. You'd been around the music hall world.
That's correct. Yes, I started when I was about 9 years of age, entertaining people in my small town. And that led to me touring as I think I was the youngest stand-up comedian in England for many years. I was 17 and a half years of age, and I was touring the country in a show with young talent. And because of that, I then was able to move from, let's say, music hall into pop singing purely by accident. And then I became a pop singer in England under the legendary George Martin. I was his first recording artist. George got me 2 or 3 hits in the music, in the hit parade. And then I finally said to George, I really miss comedy. I'd like to get back to it. So I'm going to leave the pop singing world and just go back to what I love more than anything. And it was then that Dunlop came along and asked me to join his company. In the meantime, I'd been doing films, the Carry On films. So I was getting more experience of film work as well as the experience of being on stage.
And when you did these Edinburgh productions, was this the first time you would sort of tread the boards?
Absolutely, as a comic. Dunlop phoned me one day and he said, you know, I wonder if you'd like to play Autolycus in Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale. And I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Dunlop, I can't do Shakespeare. I'm a stand-up comic. And he said, who the hell, well, he didn't say hell, but I'll use the word, who the hell are you to say you can't do Shakespeare? And then he said, every Shakespearean comic walks on stage and introduces himself the same as you do. You go on stage and you say, hi, I'm Jim Dale. Autolycus walks on the stage and says, I'm Autolycus, the snapper up of unconsidered trifles. Or Costard speaks to the audience. And Lancelot Gobbo says, my name's Lancelot, or Good Gobbo, or Good Lancelot. They all talk to the audience. They are his comics. And you can be one as well. And so with that, I gave up a lucrative job as a pop singer for £20 a week. I was married with 4 children. So that was taking a big gamble. But it did pay off because I moved from the realm of pop singing and music hall into legit theater, and gradually over the years realized that I perhaps could do a little more than just stand-up comedy or funny roles, and that resulted in further experience on the stage playing another Peter Nichols play, Joe Egg. And
Joe Egg, and you've done Privates on Parade, too.
I did Privates on Parade twice, actually.
So
I did it 20 years later, wanting to know who my character was. 20 years later, how had he grown? And it was more successful than the first time we did it.
And, of course, okay, you would go on to have this long relationship with Peter Nichols and his work. But at the point when the National Health first came to your attention, were you aware of his work at all?
No, I wasn't, because as I said, I'd been involved in music hall, which was 8 shows a week. No, more than that, sorry. 14 shows a week for 2 whole years, 50 weeks a year. I'd had no chance to see any other type of theater. And as a pop singer, I was involved in touring and recording and traveling and performing. No time to see any other theater. And so I came as a complete newcomer to Peter Nichols' work. But as soon as I read it, I realized what a marvelous opportunity this was to not just do what I knew I could do, which was communicate with an audience and perhaps make them laugh, but also to get involved in the serious side of acting for the first time in my life. And that was the lesson I learned from the National Health. And I proceeded to go on to, I won't say bigger and better things, but other things written by Peter Nichols and other top writers.
I wonder if you could comment a little on Nichols, the man, because having had decades worth of acquaintance with his work, maybe you have some insights into what kind of fellow this is.
Peter was the sort of writer who was an angry writer, mainly because not many of his plays had received financial acclaim. Albert Finney starred in Joe Egg on Broadway, and I think he had very good reviews, but he left after something like 12 weeks. And whoever took over, and I don't know who it was, but the play came off very quickly. Everybody came to see Albert Finney, from not Joseph Andrew, the other second Fielding novel, Tom Jones. They knew Albert Finney from that. So the play quickly came off. And then the film was made of Joe Egg and with Alan Bates. And unfortunately, they edited out every bit of comedy from that film, and it became a very sad film about a young married couple with a spastic child. And Peter said, it's a funny story because it happened to me and to Thelma. We had a child like this, and I only write from memory. And consequently, I remember him saying to me, you're too good as that character, because you're funnier than I am, because that's me. You understand? That is me, the part you're playing.
We're talking about Joe Egg?
Joe Egg. Yes. He said, Joe Egg, you're a school teacher. I used to be a school teacher, but you're up there as an actor, Jim Dale, the comic. I said, all school teachers are actors. They act their whole day out in front of classroom of students. That's not who they really are. That's who what they put on to get through to those children. And he began to realize that I was not trying to outdo him, as it were. I was just reading his lines. I'm putting into his lines the comedy that I discovered there. So it's due to Peter that I was terrifically successful in Joe Egg with Stockard Channing. She won the Tony Award. We'd asked for the play to be redone again, and so it walked away with the best revival, Tony Award for the best revival. And then Privates on Parade, I loved that more than anything. That, of course, was again Peter Nichols from Singapore days when he was an entertainer in the army. And I think Kenneth Williams was part of the team there, and John Schlesinger was the magician. And so Peter put all that into Privates on Parade, and I played the outrageous queen. And it was a joy. That was a joy to play. My wife-to-be, Julie, brought her dad to see me for the first time. He had no idea who Jim Dale was. And suddenly there's this Vera Lynn, the Force's sweetheart, me, singing a song roughly like Noel Coward. And Marlena Dietrich in tights, and then Carmen Miranda with the maracas. He couldn't believe what he was looking at, but I quickly became part of his family, and he accepted me with all my faults.
So let's go back to the young, lean years for Peter Nichols, and you can correct me if I don't have the details quite right, but my understanding is that Joe Egg was, if not a huge blockbuster, sort of a success d'estime, and that led to Olivier and Ken Tynan offering up the National Theater as a sort of incubator for his next play, which would be the National Health. And it would be the same team who had worked together on Joe Egg, Nichols as writer, and Michael Blakemore.
Michael Blakemore directing, yes.
I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit about, because those of the viewers who are seeing the film or watching it for a second time while this commentary plays know, of course, that it has this very interesting structure where we sort of toggle back and forth between a very real men's sick ward and a sort of soap operatic version of the same material. There you are wearing your blonde shag and doing your best sort of Dr. Kildare.
In the stage production, of course, I didn't play this in the television. The play is real. Everything that happens in the ward is real. Then they say, let's watch television. And suddenly the television, the stage changes, and up from the trapdoor comes the set in the studio with the nurses in it.
This is what I'd wondered about, because of course
I
you
wasn't
can't cut
in that.
back and forth.
I was the narrator. I stood on the side narrating this, as you hear the commentator all the way through. And it was only when they asked me to play in the film that they then said, we'd like you to do double role. Instead of the narrator, we want you to become, God, look how young he looks. We want you to become the television doctor. And that was fun to play.
Yeah, and I have several questions about that. Just briefly, how would you describe the character of Barnett, or how was he originally described to you?
Barnett was a sort of person that we meet them all the time in life. They're very funny people. They are very funny people, and especially in this particular play, he walks on stage and says to the audience immediately, "It's wicked to laugh." An old man came into the next ward. I went to see him. I said, "Dad, I forgot. Let me go back on that." I went into the next ward, and I said to an old man, "They're bringing in a case of syphilis," and he said, "Well, it'll make a change from Lucas 8." So that's a lovely big laugh that you can get with the audience. Your answer to that, there's the lady down there knows what I'm talking about. So you're immediately communicating with the audience. So they're on your side. Now you're making them laugh even more, and then your material starts to get a little sicker. It's not as funny, but you're still laughing. Why are you laughing? This man is seducing you, and you're idiots. You're being taken in by this man. And we see that underneath, deep down underneath, there is a nasty character there who is selling the alcoholic liquor on the side to make money. He is not a nice person. And at the very end of the film, I remember just standing, looking over a balcony and with a cigarette end, just flicking it at the very people I'd been making fun with and making them laugh. I couldn't give a damn about them, his character. And so it was a wonderful challenge for a stand-up comic not to be funny with the jokes. trying, doing the material, but at the same time, they could see there's a look in your eyes, and your voice is now changing slightly. You've become harder, and they're a little frightened of you now. They're backing away from you. You've hurt them, and they've been humbugged by you.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, I mean, obviously, you're somebody who had extensive experience as a film actor previously. At this point, you're still fairly fresh to stage acting, serious acting. How did then, when the opportunity came to make this film, how did you think about playing to a film camera as opposed to playing to a live audience, and how did you monkey with the performance?
Well, I learned a lesson when I was doing the Carry On films, because I always thought that everybody overacted. Most people overacted in the Carry On films, and we know why now, and I know why now, because I would say, what lens are we on? He said, it's a wide-angle lens, so just give it a little more. Mm-hmm. And then you realize later on that it wasn't a wide-angle lens, it was a two-shot, and your expression, don't forget, it's too big for that two-shot. It's big. It's okay for the wide angle. Yeah. Like when you're on stage, if you sit in the front row of my act, it will look as if I'm overacting up there. But I'm trying to get to the back of the second balcony with this facial with facial looks, and it takes a little bit more than just the raising of an eyebrow to do that, to get that over. So I realized that in this national health film that it was an opportunity to pull back on all of this. No exaggerated acting, just pull it all back and just keep it in the face.
And how many performances did you do as Barnett on stage? How long were you with the stage production?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me explain what happened at the National Theatre at the Old Vic in those days. We were opposite the Young Vic. Consequently, I was working at the Young Vic playing either Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew or Scapino. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, at the National Theatre, I was appearing in the National Health. I was also rehearsing with Anthony Hopkins a two-hander play called The Architect and the Emperor of Assyria, just two men. I was also appearing as Costard in Love's Labour's Lost and as a Calais in Captain of Copenhagen, divided by Frank Dunlop. My rehearsal schedule was sort of Captain of Copenhagen in the morning, in the afternoon, Scapino at the Young Vic, in the evening, the National Health at the National Theatre. Afterwards, after we'd eaten, meal at night, rehearsing till 2 o'clock in the morning with another play, Architect and the Emperor of Assyria again. So I was really gobsmacked with work. I never saw my wife or my children for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. They were all in bed by the time I got home, and they'd gone to school by the time I got up. So it was a frightening period of my life when I thought, where the hell do I get the energy to do all this? And it started to show eventually, you know. But it was a lot of work.
I'd like to hear a little about what the public and the critical response was to the play, because I've read a bit, and it seems there was even within the National Theatre some dissent about how, as you put it earlier, how cold and cutting in some respects the piece was, the fact that it makes ample use of flatulence and bodily functions, and so on and so forth.
It was life, and of course the theatre to a lot of people is make-believe. And this was, it came about with the kitchen sink dramas of the 50s and 60s, you know, with Richard Harris and those type of films that he made. It was pretty rough to sit there as an old person and hear people like myself walk on stage calling, "Bring out your dead." That was my opening line, I believe, in the film, or in the stage play. And gradually, as I said, the humor got very black and very sick and very deep, and it upset quite a few people. I remember I was describing, one of the scenes was when I had to describe how you lay out a dead person. Now, this is comedy, and Peter said, it is funny. It is funny, and you will be able to make people laugh. But as I was doing it one night, I heard a woman in the second row say, "That won't happen to me," and it threw me so much. She was and she was crying. "That won't happen to me." She was saying it to herself, not to anybody else, but very loud. And it made me realize, yes, this is really getting very deep now. And a lot of people, I think some occasions, people did get up to walk out. It was getting a bit too much. I think one of the problems was, if I can remember, as the curtain went up, as it were, you could smell the hospital, antiseptic soap, spray stuff. And that wafted out over the audience to give the feeling that you were in a real hospital. And of course, people don't like that smell. It means you're ill. It means, or a relative is ill, and that's not a place you want to be. And so to bring the reality of what happens when a person does have a heart attack in a hospital. We didn't show it all happening behind screens. The screen was knocked over and you saw what they were doing to somebody to bring them back to life. And it was a horrifying experience for certain people in the audience. And of course, for the actors themselves, we had to accept that is a reality and learn from the nurses and the doctors who came along to give us literally instruction on how to do things. And it was a great learning curve I was passing through at that time.
And I mean, it sounds like you had an enormous amount on your plate at the moment, so maybe you weren't as privy to this, but I have read that Nichols at least had at the time and has spoken subsequently of having a feeling that even inside the National Theater, that maybe there were some who weren't particularly fond of the play.
Well, that was Larry.
Yeah.
Oh, Larry didn't like it.
Yeah.
He didn't like this. And that's why, of all the plays that we did there, National Health received very few performances. Not as many as it should have done if it was in repertory the way that all the other plays were. I couldn't believe that there was a time when there were 2 weeks when we didn't do it. Now, that was not on as far as I was concerned. You need get into the flow of a play. You can't suddenly leave it for 2 weeks, because before you do it the next time, you've got to have a rehearsal. You've got to try, or 2 rehearsals. You've got to keep it as high, on your toes and as high up as possible. And I was so tired during all that period. It's a lot of it is just a blur as to what we went through, from running from one rehearsal to another rehearsal to a show, and then back to a rehearsal room, then dinner, then back to rehearsal, then getting in the car, going home, being back there at 10 o'clock the next morning. It was a work of love, I suppose.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that for Nichols, he was, for Joe Egg and for other works, he's always drawing on autobiography, and in this case, it's a visit in a hospital that he had, I believe, in 1960, 61, with a collapsed lung.
That's right. That's when he wrote it.
That he was drawing from.
I said to Peter once, I said, once you run out of memories, you won't be able to write, Peter, because everything is from his memory. Every play he's written, except, of course, Poppy. At the Royal Shakespeare Company, that was a send-up of a pantomime for real. Instead of your heads on poles, puppet heads, these were real heads that came up on spears, It was frightening for children, I think. But that wasn't at the National, that was at the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Well, another thing that I'd wondered about with the reception is did you have a sense of how this work was interfacing with the way that people were talking about the NHS at that time?
Well, that's what it was, the national health of England, or the British Isles. Yes, people came to see the national health, and I think they left having had one of the great evenings of their life. It's a brilliant play. It's absolutely brilliant. And of course, we had the top actors of the National Theatre playing those roles. And it was so believable what they were doing. It wasn't acting, it was just being, which is what I love.
And of the stage cast, are you the only the only person from the stage production who appeared in the film, or were there others who carried over?
No, I think I was the only one.
That's interesting. So let's start moving toward the film a little bit. You mentioned the fact that here, for the first time, you're reprising a role that you're pretty familiar with, but you're also playing Dr. Boyd, which is this very sort of broad soap operatic performance. And I wondered what, if any, research you did in getting ready to do that. I mean,
well, I watched what was coming over from America in the way of these hospital series that are so fake. It's unbelievable. Or they were in those days. The reality has crept into it even much more than in the early days when it was all so fake. And I just didn't quite know what voice to use for an American. I didn't. And then I thought, well, let's do not Sean Connery, but a voice like Sean Connery. Let's see if we can get away with that. And it worked, I think. The clip vowels, it worked. I hope it worked. As I said, I've only ever seen the National Health film when they had it on for the press, and that was in 1973, so I can't remember what it looked like. One of these days I must borrow a copy from you and play it back to me.
And then also, it's worth noting that I think the last couple of Carry On films that you did were Carry On Doctor and Carry On Doctor Again.
Yes.
Which must have created some kind of bizarre frissons for audiences.
Of course it is, yes.
So you'd just been in these two medical farces.
Actually, there's more than that, because in the early days on radio, there was a soap opera called Mrs. Dale's Diary, and her husband, Jim, was a doctor. So there's been medical people in my theatrical life for many years now.
And many strange coincidences going on.
Yeah.
Also, I was requested that I ask you, because you have a very brief equestrian scene in here, if you were an experienced rider at the time.
I'm not an experienced rider, but I did a Disney film called, it should have been called The Sons of Jasper Bloodshy. That says it all. This guy's called Jasper Bloodshy, and he's got two sons, and they wanted me to play all three roles. So I played a 98-year-old man and his twin brothers, sons. And one was a gunslinger and one was a Salvation Army preacher. So I had to learn to ride a horse for that. And so I didn't actually fall out of the saddle in National Health, but it was, I'd been on a horse a few times, so I wasn't too scared.
It is a brief scene. So.
It is a brief scene.
Before we move on fully to the film, I just wondered, with the stage production, were there what were some of the other names who were?
Tom Baker.
Oh,
Tom Baker was. There was a very funny instance. I was playing Scapino one night, and I used to have to run around the balcony and leap for a rope, and I leapt for the rope one night and missed it. And I crashed 10 feet onto concrete, which is the Young Vic stage is made of concrete. And I broke a bone in my foot. And so they put a plaster cast on it, and I was on crutches. And they said, well, you can't possibly pay Barnett in the National Health, the other theatre, the Old Vic. I said, well, can't we get somebody to do the physical stuff, and I'll be on crutches doing the lines. And of course they got Tom Baker. And the program that night, the little note in the said, a great deal of Jim Dale's part tonight will be played by Tom Baker. A great deal of Jim Dale's part. And it was lovely, not, the part of Jim Dale will be played by or Barnett, that's it. A great part of Barnett's role tonight will be played by Tom Baker. Yeah.
And actually, I also wanted to ask you, because...
And Charlie Kay Charlie Kay is one of the great actors. He should have been recognized as one of those, along with Ronnie Pickup and Derek Jacobi and Jeremy Brett. I shared a dressing room with all of them for 2 years, and Charlie is my dream actor.
So, of these people who you were sharing dressing rooms with, who you were treading the boards with, I would think that your background was fairly singular, that there had not been a lot of other folks at the National Theater who were coming out of that vaudeville music hall background
Well, there
by
weren't.
way of pop stardom?
Well, there weren't many people at the not many actors at the National Theatre asking, "What does this mean? This Shakespeare line mean?" And getting the answer, "I'll tell you what it means if you give me a funny bit to do when I walk on." So we would swap. I'd swap comedy for a little bit of advice on how to perform Shakespeare.
And this must have been a very exciting time to be there, because it's still, I mean, the creative ferment at that moment.
That's right. And
those...
Larry was alive and well and younger, and he was playing Merchant of Venice at the same. There again, I was playing Lancelot Gobbo at the same time. There were so many things in repertory, you see. And I remember playing with Jane Lapater. She was and Derek Jacobi in Merchant of Venice. That was a unbelievable performance. But I say, but from Laurence Olivier, it was an unbelievable performance.
And how long overall were you at the National Theater?
I think something like 2.5 to 3 years, something like that. Then what happened was that they asked me to do some more carry-on films. And I had to tell them that I needed Wednesday matinees. I need to do Wednesday matinees at the National Theatre. And they said, "We can't allow you to do Wednesday matinees. We'll have to, what will we do on the film set if you're not there? It's too expensive." So I decided at that point that I had to make a decision as to whether to stay with the carry-on films, and that we only did 2.5 films a year, or, take a gigantic step into acting on the stage. And you'll understand that after 28 films, or something like 28 films in England over the years that I've been involved in, since coming to America, that was 35 years ago, I haven't done any films, no films or no television series, because I just love stage acting more than anything, more than appearing in front of the camera. And the joy about that is the fact that I can go 2 miles out of New York City and nobody knows me. Nobody knows me at all, and which is, to me, is wonderful, because I've been through the experience of being, well, let's just say a successful rock and roll singer for half an hour. Of course, that's all I was, but and recognized through the carry-on films, and literally having people grab you by the collar or by the shirt in the street and yell out, "Hey, it's that silly bugger from the carry-on films." I don't need all that. That's not who I am. I'm a very private person. And so I had to make a decision. Do I go and live in California and make television series and films and all that, or no, just do good stage work with good directors, good writers, and good material? And I decided to go along that direction, and I'm very glad I did. I wouldn't change it for the world, because the stage plays that I've done, they've been, one is on stage every night as that character, and you're not being edited out. It's not being chopped about, your performance, so that when you see a chopped up film, you think, where am I? Or, where did my lines go? Or blah, blah, blah. So I've never been interested in making a big name for myself. I would hate to be recognized every day from the minute I get up or go out to the minute I come home at night. That's not what I want out of life, and I've never gone in for it, thank goodness. And you're looking at a happy man.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, that actually segues nicely, because this film, which I believe is released into theaters in England in 1973, would you have at that point been out of the National Theater when the opportunity to do the film came along?
When that film came out, that was 1973, I was doing a musical, Cameron Mackintosh's first musical in the West End with Millicent Martin. It was called The Card. And I remember must have been 1973. And then Scapino brought me to America with Frank Dunlop at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. We did Taming of the Shrew with Richard Gere. It was in it. He was a member of our company too. And little Scapino clicked, and we came onto Broadway and stayed for a solid year, playing to capacity audiences. That was my introduction to Broadway, followed by 3 films from Disney, followed by Barnum, which again was the big Broadway musical. And so then I decided that this is where the work is. I would go back to England after these ventures over here in America, and there would be no work. Nobody offered me work for months and months and months on end, and I needed to earn the money. In the meantime, the work was being offered in New York, and I would come back to do theater here.
Yeah. This just seems to sort of open up a kind of new chapter in your film career where you're done with the carry-ons, and you, as you mentioned, this also coincides with starting to do the Disney films, Pete's Dragon, among others. I'd like to hear a little about when you first got word of the fact that they were going to be making a film out of the National Health. I know it's a Columbia production, presumably dating from the moment when the American studios were keeping fairly significant studio presence in London. But when...
With Jack Gold.
Yeah.
How I think I got the part due to Ned Sharon, who was a producer. Ned had worked with me as a pop singer. Would you believe it? Ned was a producer of 6-5 Special for the BBC, and I was a young pop singer in those days, and I got to know Ned very well indeed. And I think perhaps Ned was the one who suggested Jim Dale for that role. But look who else was in the film, the lovely Lynn Redgrave, who became a dear friend over the years. Everybody in that film, from the nurses to the doctors to the other ward orderlies, were wonderful actors.
Yeah, and I'd like to get sort of person by person to talking about the cast momentarily. You mentioned Jack Gold, though, and I've read some accounts which suggest initially the idea was that Michael Blakemore was going to direct himself, and that did not come to pass. At what point, when you became attached, was it already Jack Gold who was going to direct?
It was already Jack Gold, yes. And I remember meeting Jack, and we were talking about it. He said, I just want you to literally just repeat what you did at the National Theatre. It's not changed very much, he said, except we'll have you in the television series part of the play as an American doctor, or whatever doctor. That's the only difference, but you know the routines, you know these monologues, and there's no need for me to change. I don't want to change it. See, don't forget, we developed all those lovely long monologues that Barnett spouts throughout the play. We'd polished and polished and polished them. It wasn't as if we were just doing that in front of the camera for the first time that morning at rehearsal and then filming it. No, so there was a confidence, I think, for having just to stand there and do these lovely monologues, knowing that you've worn it into shape.
And did you know Gold at all previously?
I didn't.
This was the first time that you'd
That's right.
been acquainted with
Don't forget
his work.
that a director in a film really has a lot on his plate, you know, and to even have just 2 or 3 minutes alone with the guy prior to the film or during the film is a wonderful experience, because of all things, he's got so much on his mind. But he did spend time prior to the filming, but that probably to him was the busiest time of his life as well, trying to put it all together.
Well, and
especially in that monolith of a place that we did it in.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit about where the actual shooting took place?
That's in the East End of London somewhere. It's a giant place of a hotel.
Looks like a big Victorian
There
pile.
was a story going around when we first found the place course, it had these huge fans, blah, 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 and huge rooms. And we were told that there was an architect who, a long time ago, who was asked to design a hospital for the East End of London at the same time as another firm asked him to design a hospital for India. And the plans got mixed up. So instead of this beautiful, big, airy hospital in the East End, that should have been in India, and the low one in India, should have been for the East End of London. Whether that's true, I don't know. It makes a good story, but we had to compress this hospital. It was so big that everything was so big. We had to narrow the corridors, lower the ceilings, because it did look like a castle inside that.
And I wondered also, was everything shot there? That is to say, the soap opera material and the, for lack of a better word, real world material, that was all shot in the same location?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay. And
except the horse riding, obviously. That was, we found a field somewhere. But...
Sure. And just in terms of the practical exigencies of the shoot, were you going back and forth between soap opera mode and real world mode, or? No,
I think they shot them. See, don't forget that scene when you see me as the doctor with blonde hair. We had to save all those scenes for the end of the film, because I had blonde hair, you see, for real. That wasn't a wig. So all those scenes had to be at the end of the film, after I'd done all the scenes of Barnett. And
your blonde coiffure
is
it's just so striking. I couldn't believe it was the real thing.
No, it looks like a wig, doesn't it? But it really wasn't. Oh, God. Oy. No, my kids couldn't understand why Dad suddenly had blonde hair. They hated it.
Well, this is something I wanted to ask you about, because these scenes must have presented a particular challenge, is acting poorly.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You have to be very, very, it's convincing acting you have to do. You have to convince the audience that you're a doctor. And these are all they're not bad actors, but they're not good actors. They're just actors. They're from soap operas, and you don't expect, Academy Award-winning performers up there. So the dialogue is stilted. The performances are meant to be like this. If it looks fake, it's because it is fake. We're faking acting. Look.
Darling, I adore you.
But I would think that would present a particular set of difficulties for a...
Well, we'd be halfway through a scene like that. Look at this. If that is underacting, look at it. Look at that.
With
No, that's it. What a way to end.
With some
what do you do for an encore?
Impressive leather trousers, it should be added.
So there's the reality of it. Look, that's the... So you saw the fact that these are actors who are performing fake acting, and we would be breaking up. They'd have to cut and say, stop laughing. Just try and keep a straight face while you're doing this, because it was so fake to all of us.
And it's interesting, because rewatching the film and perhaps the presence of a very
This is a lovely, funny scene, that one is.
Yes, if you want to if you want to hold court on this at all, by all means do. This is presumably what Larry Olivier objected to.
It's when he suddenly flinches, and I think Barnett says, don't flinch, one slip down there and Bob's your auntie.
But in terms of that...
See, here again, he now he knows that this man is gay, this patient is gay. So now the dig starts to come in. He starts telling him about another.
Yes, this is Clive Swift, who is the
he was brilliant.
Basket weaving ex-schoolmaster.
That's right.
Who had very recently been in Frenzy, I think, when this came out.
Bob's your auntie. Bob's your auntie.
That was it.
Was that your first time working with Mr. Swift?
Oh yes, I loved him. Yeah.
later in.
Everybody in the film was a joy to work with. And this is what acting should be. Everybody should enjoy doing it. There shouldn't be anybody there who has an ego or feeling bigger and better than anybody else. And everybody in that film was just a joy, as they were at the National Theatre.
And you felt that there was a good kind of camaraderie among the
Rapport.
cast?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting because it's such a wide range of experience levels. We talked a bit earlier about Bob Hoskins being in perhaps his second screen role and probably his first of any heft whatsoever.
Yeah. Yes, he had a sad little role, and he was just brilliant. So normal, so natural. And he has that lovely voice. That Bob Hoskins' voice is very similar to Michael. By that, Michael Caine, you know, the Cockney side of it, living in a manor. Beautiful to watch. And they all had their own individual. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being carried away by that.
Your shaving of genitals captured for.
That's right.
For all of posterity.
Mr. Ash, the end
Was Hoskins, was he a comfortable, confident actor in front of the camera at that point?
Oh, yes.
He already knew his way around things?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody was. Everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody had the experience.
Colin Blakely.
I mean, Colin was just a joy. In fact, Peter Nichols, when in the play on the stage, he walks into the ward and they say, "Who is he?" We don't know his name. And then later on in the play, Peter Nichols had a nurse walk up to him and say, "Mr. So-and-so, time for your..." And we said, "Peter, you've given him a name." Oh, so he had to cut that out.
These are the things that dress
he'd
rehearsals are for.
forgotten. He'd given the man a name. And the whole thing was nobody knew. And there she is.
And that's Bert Palmer, I believe, there, of Coronation Street. And that, I think,
and
must
Eleanor
have...
Bron.
Yeah.
And Eleanor Bron and I worked in Cameron's first musical, The Card, with Millie Martin. So
I would think that, I mean, because again, there's such a wide age range, and you have like a couple of older actors, people who've been around for some time, that must have been quite a delight for you as a still younger actor to have these sort of
absolutely
living links.
When you say a younger actor, I mean, I must have been in my 30s then.
You're still a young man.
All right then.
I just want to mention we've also got Mervyn Johns, who is a Ealing regular.
Well, he was Glynis Johns' father, and Glynis Johns was a big star in the earlier film days.
And then also David Hutchison, who's in The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp as the sort of dyspeptic Tory, I guess is how you would describe that character. I just wondered if you had the occasion to sort of pry any good stories out of these guys.
It's very difficult looking back after all these years to remember what once talked about over coffee or that. It was very similar to sitting around with the Carry On team, one by one. Nobody boasted about what they'd done or done. Everybody sat around and just told stories about showbiz, about other people. It wasn't gossip, it was just fun. And we had that same camaraderie on that film. We'd all sit together in the cafe, having terrible food that they used to serve. And a great time was had by all. I mean, you got to know the people, which is what you should do. You know, I hate it when people go off on their own just to put them together. Let's get a feeling of camaraderie.
No big egos on this set.
No, not on this one.
And I'm sorry, was this hospital building, it was no longer functioning in that capacity?
It wasn't functioning at all, no. But this was the actual ward, look. There's Bob. Lovely actor.
He's barely conscious. He can't even hear you.
Doing well, he is. The will to live. My dad's the same. 72 and game for anything.
And this is the scene when I think he said if Jesus were alive today, he wouldn't say thou shalt not kill. He'd advocate mass euthanasia.
Yeah.
Is that the line? I tend to remember that line.
Well, yeah. The title of the film sort of works as a double entendre, essentially,
That's right,
because in
yes.
this men's ward we have the sort of bluff family man, working class socialist who is the Hoskins character.
Yes.
We have Hutchison's, as I said, sort of nihilistic paleoconservative.
Yes, absolutely.
Clive Swift, I don't know quite how his character fits into it, who spends most of the latter part of the movie.
Look at that lovely face. Look
Yeah.
at it. And Bob, wow, perfect.
Yeah, Hutchison, who was sort of a go-to for like blustery colonels.
That's right, or lawyers or something like that.
Yeah.
Always played the same sort of roles.
Definitely a type. And
Always with wigs on in court. Those are the sort of face
A
that lent
barrister.
itself to a barrister, definitely. Have wig will travel, yes, or convict.
And come to think of it, I think this might have been his last film.
Really.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
But it's fascinating just to have, Hoskins here as a very young man, and then you have a direct physical link to like the Ealing movies.
Yeah.
Like it's all together in this ward.
But of all, I mean, Bob has really, I'm thrilled with the success that Bob Hoskins has had over the years. He's played some wonderful, serious roles, very funny roles, playing with cartoon characters. Others like The Long Good Friday? They're perfect. So he can be anything on screen.
Well, in a strange way, in rewatching this, I was thinking it's not so terribly far from something like Pennies from Heaven, the Dennis Potter television version,
right, yes.
some years later, where again you have this toggling back and forth between a not very bright actual life and a sort of pop accented dream of what life
It was a
ought
lovely
to
way
be.
of doing it, wasn't it? That was the first version of it. There was a later version as well, years later.
Yeah,
I like the first one, yes.
I wonder if we could speak a little bit about the actresses as well, the various nurses. Sheila Scott Wilkinson, who I think is an American expat, you
That's right.
share quite a number of scenes with.
That's right, yes. We didn't know each other when the film started, but, she's such a lovely, lovely, lovely lady. Where is she now?
She's in Los Angeles, to the best of my knowledge.
Is she really?
Doing a theater group there.
Okay, that's good.
She stayed at it. But yeah, this is one of the things that sort of runs through is particularly in these melodramatic interstitials is it's almost sort of mocking the social issue oriented problem pictures of the day where there's a much stroking of the chin about the Negro question and so on and so forth.
Look, that's this particular scene.
Yes. It's Donald Sinden, I believe.
Donald Sinden, yes. And there again, I mean, this lovely character, it's just a fraction over the top, which is what it's supposed to be. Just the way he's dressed, just the wig and all. It's just that television character that they accept as being the real thing.
So we've talked a little bit about, I mean, obviously the necessary differences that exist between the staging where these fake scenes would come up from, you said, out of the wings or?
In the National Theatre, they cut a big hole in the stage, and it came up on a lift. The whole set. Here, it was when something's happening in the ward and somebody yells out, "Why don't we just watch television?" And then it cuts.
And I wondered, in addition to the obvious differences that have to happen between stage and screen, were there any that you can recall major differences from the stage script and the film script?
No.
No.
They were definitely not. I don't think Peter rewrote much of it to accommodate a film version of it. I mean, he didn't have to. I think the television parts changed somewhat. It had to, because it had to have my character being the doctor. He enlarged on that, I'm sure, from the stage. Don't forget, when that happened on the stage, we were off. The stage went dark and we were off, and it was just the televised section that we were now watching. And then the lights came up and the section floated down through the hole in the stage and they covered over again, and we came on again. So I was never privy to watching that every night. It was my opportunity to go race off, have a quick glass of water, or just do something, as you have to do in a long play. And I never saw those scenes for as long as when I watched them here, I thought at the time, this is much, much longer than the stage version was. And it works. Because one thing that we couldn't do on the stage version was to do what they do in all of these television series, which is close-ups. Close-ups, constant close-ups. Most of the scene is in close-up because they don't have a backdrop. They don't know it's up against some blank wall for the American television thing.
I wonder if you remember anything at all about John Coquillon, the cinematographer?
No,
I mention it only because he's shot some of my very favorite British films.
It was 45 years ago, was it now? It's a long way to look back on, trying to remember. No, I really can't. I wish I could.
Well, that's a cinematographer's problem to crack, is how do you get that televisual quality to these scenes?
No, see, he was working on nearly every scene, obviously. So one didn't get to know much about that side of the camera.
Were there any people on this film that you wound up working with again, or?
It's very strange in show business. You can go through for 20 years without seeing the same people, especially in New York City. Glenn Close is the only person I've worked with. I mean, I worked with her in Barnum, and we did Busker Alley together. But all the other people who have become big names over here, I haven't worked with them. But there's so much theater, so many places to go, not just New York City, but big cities around America where they put on wonderful theater. So it's very difficult to meet up or accidentally bump into. I don't do it very often. Edward Hibbert is a great mate of mine. Simon Jones is another great mate, and we've stayed together over the years. But if I do occasionally see somebody, I hardly recognize them because it's been so long. And same with this film. I don't think I ever saw anybody don't forget, after that, I came to America. So I haven't really been back to England to live since those days of 1975, 6. And then I came over here in 1979 for Barnum and stayed. I got married over here. Always wise to live where your wife lives. Yes. And she's a New Yorker.
And I wonder, do you recall if the exterior for the nicer of the two hospitals, the Fantasy Hospital, the name of which is presently escaping me, that must have been somewhere else other than East London?
I don't know where that was. I don't think I was. I don't think I was involved in the outside of the hospital.
Sure.
I have no idea where we did the horse riding. It's supposed to be a park or something. That's a lovely scene. Yes.
And this is all on location, so no studio shooting.
No,
or
this
whatever.
is the real McCoy.
Okay.
And it really does look real. There's nothing fake about this. Look at those stones. They're filthy. Those were brand new ones. Look how old that place is, because that was built prior to the Industrial Revolution, probably.
And has
That
all
soot,
the
that
accumulated
soot.
soot. Yes.
Yes, they may have cleaned the rest of London up, but they didn't do a thing to this hospital.
I'm talking about Shanghai.
And the bird droppings on the wall, you don't see that that very often.
And this is an interesting scene too, because I think this is where you get most of that sense of the sick ward as sort of a
right.
forum for people to bounce off one another. And you also get a lot of this sense of colonial nostalgia on the part of a couple of the characters.
Yes. But
People
that's
pining for the good old days in the colonies.
Colin's accent was so broad, but very broad. But he managed to make it understood.
Mm-hmm. And I think by that point he's missing his two front teeth, possibly. Yes.
They didn't. Well, there's the. Yes, he did take his front teeth out.
I wondered about that because it looks.
I didn't have them taken out. I mean,
they were out. Yes.
Fake ones. Yes.
Yes.
But it takes a lot for a leading actor to do that. Let the whole world know.
Posted in 1943.
We have the.
And he was very good, the actor there.
Yeah, who I believe was a Coronation Street regular.
But look, it oozes. It's so real.
Burt Palmer.
I hate the word acting. I really hate the word acting. And these guys aren't acting. Look, they're being the character, which is all it is. It sounds so simple.
I wonder, was Peter Nichols much involved with the film shoot? Did you see him a lot?
He would have been involved in not coming up to us, because that's not on. If he was involved, he would have been taking his thoughts to Jack Gold, and the two of them would then make some sort of decision as to whether Peter's observation was a good one or not, or whether his added material, because Peter perhaps wanted to fine touch certain sentences, would be taken up. But Peter would never come up to me to give advice or to tell me how to do it, or any of the actors. No writer should do that. They should go to the director. He's the guy in charge, as you know.
And was he fairly, Jack Gold, was he fairly hands-off with you?
Well, you have to be a bit of a psychiatrist as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I just wonder if you being the sole holdover from the stage play, if there was an idea like, oh, well, you know, he knows.
He just let me, when I say he let me have my head, I don't mean I did it, you know. I was very, what's the word I can use? Disciplined is the word. Yeah. If it's going to be captured on film, you know, I don't fool around. I don't add things or add a line or do things that are distracting to a fellow actor, you know. And Jack Gold had obviously seen the play, so he just allowed me to be Barnett.
Now, you mentioned this earlier, though, that the end of the film is very different from the end of the play, in which the play ends with a direct address.
Well, the play ends with everybody doing a bit of pantomime on stage, blackface pantomime as well. It was a crazy sort of ending, with Barnett actually turning to the audience. I mean, I think he's playing a ukulele or something, and saying, "It's a funny old world we live in, and you're lucky to get out of it alive." And then the music would come up and the lights would go down, and it was just that blank stare looking at the audience.
And that, I think we could call a sort of major difference between the stage production and the film, is even some things such as your monologue about how to prepare a corpse.
Yes.
in the film, it's very much a monologue still, but you have another intern with you, so
Yes.
it's something less of a fourth wall break. Like there is some kind of diegetic reasoning behind why you're doing this.
Yeah. See, the great thing was that when he did lay out the corpse, he was teaching another hospital orderly how to do it. And so the hospital orderly, in my eyes, was the theater audience. He was the theater audience. He was reacting the way a theater audience would. He was laughing at what I was telling him. And that was
Plugging up the
that was a
orifices.
very clever
with-
way Peter had written that.
Yeah.
So it's the monologue, not to camera, not into camera, to this man. He was using him as the audience, which was beautiful. And it helped me tremendously.
to have
Because you can't
somebody-
get a reaction from a camera, but you can get a reaction from somebody you're talking to. And that helps your performance as well, obviously.
And you talked earlier about the fact that this is not perhaps an enormously sympathetic character.
He is not sympathetic at all. He's used you. He's used you to get his cheap laughs. He's used you to get money from. He's used you to get rid of a few of the hates he has in his life. He's done it to. There's an expression in England, right? Turn you on or twist you. Or, I forget what it is now. But he's got that needle, and he loves pushing that needle in and then waggling it about, and he hurts people. You saw all those lovely people there. He one by one, he goes for them and hurts them in a way. As you know, all comedy is like a bitter pill. Trevor Griffiths wrote that in The Comedians. And it's quite true. You know, you can hurt people more with words from somebody like Barnett. He knows what he's doing. He's loving it.
And yet in the film, and maybe you'll disagree, I think there are a few moments, and perhaps this speaks to how a camera registers a performance differently, where something of a residual humanity seems to be visible
Really?
in his eyes.
Whoops. That was my mistake then.
Just pure Mephistophelian mischief.
Yes, pure mischief, yeah. The little devil. More than a little devil, you know. That flick of the cigarette says it all. Now let's get back and do it all again with these new patients. That's where he gets his kicks. And of course, they need somebody like him. We go into a hospital full of strangers, not just patients, but everybody's a stranger in there. You need to make friends, or that's what you're hoping. Somebody will feel sorry for you. Somebody will feel sympathetic, and you allow them to be that too. You mop it up, sop it up. A little bit of attention from somebody, please, you know. And if you get it from somebody like Barnett, then that's quite, you've made a friend until it's time for him to turn on you, to get his kicks.
I wonder if you ever got any feedback from people inside the medical industry. Did you ever have anybody say,
No, because,
I know that guy?
No, because... Yes, during the stage play, but once this film was over, I was off to America, so I never really came back to England for any length of time. So I wouldn't know that, but no, people were very, oh, you are a little bugger, aren't you? I mean, that was their reaction after the show when you met them. Oh, wicked you, wicked. Very nice, but...
Did you ever feel the compulsion to skulk around a medical ward and preparing?
No, I've been in hospital enough times to know what it's like there. I didn't have to do any background check for that. Well, you learn something that you have to do in the play. You learn how to lift people up, to put them on a stretcher. I know it sounds simple, but you have to learn little things like that. And we were taught that by the various people who came from the hospitals, just to say, this is how we do it. Now, just copy us. There's a scene in the film where the doctor, not me, the doctor is talking to the nurse, and the lids of it's in a operating theater, I think, and the lid goes up and he throws something in and the lid crashes down, and it's all business, shtick, shtick, shtick. Now that is very funny, but it really does happen like that in an operating theater. But Peter Nichols, it was beautifully written, and I can't remember in the film, but I do remember the stage play. Brought the house down every time they did it, because on every time he said a funny line, there was a clang. It was a like da-dum, like the bass drum or the cymbal crash for a joke. But these were lids crashing down on the various apparatus that they were using in the operating theater.
And the reports that I've read of the stage production suggest that it was a little heavier on the flatulence humor, perhaps?
On the what?
On the flatulence humor?
Yes, well, why not?
Yeah, it's in here, but not as quite as steadily as I've read that it was used on the stage.
Well, yes, but it's natural. I mean, everybody farts 17 times a day. Nobody realizes that. Everybody does. We won't mention any names, but everybody does.
Well, if there's no other takeaway from this, that figure, I think.
No, that's. I think Reader's Digest did a certain paragraph on it once.
Let's talk for a second about Lynn Redgrave, because one of the interesting things that I dug up was a reference in Peter Nichols' diaries talking about her fighting off the makeup girls on the set because she wanted to appear sort of stern and dowdy and matronly, as indeed she does.
Yes. Yes, yeah, because her character really was just brilliant, the way she performed it. And she couldn't give a damn about makeup as a character, as her character. No, she doesn't need making up.
And you knew her, at least, coming into this because of your involvement with Georgie Girl.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Although we never met in the film. They made the film first, then came to Tom Springfield and myself to show us the film and asked if we'd like to write the song for it. So we never actually met up with Lynn. I think the first time I did was at the Academy Awards. She was up for the Best Actress, and we were up for the Best Song. I'll never forget. We lost it to Born Free, a song called Born Free, and Bob
Free
Hope,
as the birds sing.
Born Free, and Bob Hope, who was hosting, at the very end of the show, he said, the winners will now go on to the Hilton Hotel to celebrate, and the losers, and he looked straight at Tom and myself in the front row, the losers will follow me up the down ramp of the Los Angeles freeway. So we didn't walk away with the award, but I walked away with a new friend called Lynn Redgrave, because we met her that night. And then, of course, years later, Lynn had a lovely dog, and I've got my dog, and we meet every day in Central Park. Just sit and have a 10-minute chat. Lovely. Sweet lady.
I'm interested also in the fact that, let's say, 3 years elapse between the stage production and the film.
Yes.
And in that time frame, I believe the Robert Altman movie MASH appears, which a very different context, but also has some of that gallows humor around the operating table. Paddy Chayefsky's film The Hospital appears. So it seems like, whereas the stage production is sort of heralding something by the time the film
arrives. It may have been a bit dated by the time it did come out. But then again, looking at it again, I would say it held up very well as a period piece now about what life was like, what it was like to be in a hospital in the East End of London, the way that it used to be. And I think the whole of that hospital layout depicted the whole of the East End of London, or London in those days. It was another era.
Another era, and yet at the same time, I think watching it in 2017, it seems not exactly a time capsule.
Really?
Many of the issues being broached are.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, of course, I understand. There's the end of the film, almost.
for the cure. And
Was this something
Well, there's
Carrie?
hardly any rehearsal. There really wasn't much rehearsal
Mm-hmm.
with Jack Gold because you don't need it when you've got actors like this.
Hey, do you get many puffs in prison? Who told you anything about me being in prison? Well, you did.
I would say Blakely is extraordinarily good, just in that I
Oh,
think
yes, look.
one of the most difficult things for an actor to do is convincingly play as though they haven't a clue what's going on around
That's
them.
right. Yeah, isn't it?
Like playing stupid is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
As completely blinkered as he is throughout. Do you have any recollection of what the response was to the film in the press, in the public?
I don't think I have any reviews for the film.
Mm.
I was out of the country when it came out.
Okay.
They must be in the archives somewhere. But,
Yeah. You were washing your hands of the whole sordid affair.
That was when I did 3 films for Disney, one on the trot, one back in England at Alnwick Castle, but the other 2, Pete's Dragon and Hot Lead Cold Feet, in Hollywood. And then I did another film over there while I waited for Barnum to come along. And as soon as that opened up in 1980, I think, 81, that stayed on Broadway for a year and a half, and then we toured it for another 9 months, I think. So my whole life started to revolve around work here in America, and has since then, whether it be on Broadway. Most of the work is on Broadway, but there's a lot of work I've done off Broadway and off Broadway, meaning it's not necessarily starring in anything, it's just being able to do the work you want to do. There's a young director who you want to work for, so you go off Broadway to do that. And that's where I get most of my thrill of being on stage with young, talented people, including the young producers, young directors, young designers, and good material. And I'm a happy man. See, I'd forgotten all of this because I didn't do this in the play.
Dr. Weston to Spitari.
It's also rather interesting, and I wonder if this holds true for the stage version, but it has a fairly high percentage of Black actors for a UK production of that period. Was that true of the stage production as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cleo Sylvester, I believe, was still is a wonderful actress. This was her first. She joined the National Theatre just to play that role in the National Health. She went on to be very well known in the first series about a Jamaican family, I believe. Early television in the early 70s. And she got a starring role in that. I never saw it because, as I said, I left a couple of years later.
Yeah, I think the film is somewhat unusual for its period in that it gives some indication of a multicultural England that very much did exist, but was not very much shown on screen. And you get it also in these sort of tours of the ward by Indian women, which cause great consternation for...
But have you been to the East End of London, around about Petticoat Lane?
I have not. I wonder, since we're letting things roll down a little bit, if you could tell me something about your break into comedy as a very young man, and if you had any particular models who you were looking at in terms of...
Well, I think I have a one-man show that I did in London a couple of years ago, and in it I talk about those early days, which is when I became the first boy in an all-girls dancing school. That was fun, as you can understand.
Sure.
But my dad said, learn how to move if you want to go on stage. So consequently, I studied ballet and tap and ballroom and national and tumbling for 6 years. And then went along for an audition to a guy called Carroll Levis and his Discoveries. And I decided to be, not dance, but do impressions. So I practiced 3 very quickly that I thought were very, very good. And
those being?
And well, I walked on the stage and I tripped over the curtain and I fell over, and it got a big laugh from the one guy sitting in the audience. And then I stood up, brushed myself down, did a silly walk to the center stage, got another laugh. Then I did my impressions, absolute silence. And so I thought I'll do an impression of the boss man himself. So I did an impression of him. And he said, wait in the wings. And he came backstage afterwards. He said those impressions were terrible. And I remember saying, well, I thought they were very funny, very good. I sounded just like those people. And he said, well, how the hell do we know, an audience know, what your mother's butcher sounds like? Or the rent man, or the local vicar? And I said, well, they do in Rothwell. He said, well, we're not playing the show in Rothwell, Bill. So anyway, that fall you did when you came on, that was funny. Get an act where you fall over, come back tonight. And that's how I landed in show business, because the stagehands threw me on stage and it got a big laugh. And so that was my act for the next 2 years, being thrown on stage and just clowning around. And that introduced me to laughter, as it were. And from then on, I thought there's nothing nicer than making people laugh. So I started to watch every great comic and read all about as much comedy as I could. But then, of course, to get on as a comic, you usually start off by copying other comics, maybe self-consciously, but unconsciously, I should say. But nevertheless, you sound like somebody, or you move like somebody, but gradually over the years, you develop your own style. And that's what happened to me, I think. So taking all that, then you start exploring this tree of show business. And even if you may not like the view from one branch of it, you just have the knowledge that you may be called upon to, i.e., be a disc jockey one day. So why not try it out if it's offered? Because there might be a play in the future where you're asked to play somebody who's had that experience. So that's what I decided to do, was to explore really every branch of show business, from learning how to play the guitar to disc jockey work, to narrating, to blah, blah, you name it, I'll try it. Just to try it, see if I love it. And there's many branches that I haven't liked, and I've come quickly back down to the main trunk again. But and I've found my limitations, and I know what my limitations are, which is good for anybody. And I know what I'm good at, which is not an ego. It's like when you take when you take a broken watch to the watchmaker, you don't say to him, are you sure you'll be able to repair it? He says, I'm a craftsman. I've been doing it for 40 years. That's not an ego. That's just him telling you the truth. And you shouldn't ask such a question. And the same goes for actors. You know, we all know eventually how good we are, or how at certain things. And we tend to work on those things to polish those things that we have going for us. And so that's what I've been doing, a hell of a lot of polishing over the years.
It's interesting what you say with regards to exploring different branches, and maybe brings us back to the national health a bit, because I can't think of anything in your career to date, circa 1969, that would have been quite as dark.
No,
as
it wasn't.
this.
That was the first time that I'd ever experienced delving into the darkness of comedy, or we'll call it comedy, but delving into those sort of words that Peter Nichols wrote for my character, and believing in them, because you know, it was fun for me to delve into that dark side and to see it happening and to hear the audience, instead of laughing, they're now gasping. Wow. For a comic, that's good. And I've always thought that, let's give you an example. Days of Wine and Roses, there was Jack Lemmon. There he is on his knees with laughter, making you laugh, falling on his knees. And the other end of the scale, there he is on his knees as an alcoholic. And people say it's the whole gamut of acting from there to there. And I tend to think it's almost like a circle. And from there to there is not that much of a jump. And that's why you'll find out that there are lots of old music hall comics who have come into show business very late in life, but with 40, 50 years of experience. And they're the ones who can really show what it's like. Bill Maynard was a big star of music hall. Max Wall was a genius. Max Wall was brilliant. Jack Douglas, who was in the Carry On films, they brought with them 50 years of experience of making people laugh and cry. And this is where they could do it because, as I said, it's not far from one extreme to the other. And Jack Lemmon proved it in that film. And so that's a lovely thing. Instead of just making that little step over into so they're laughing 1 minute and they're crying the next.
And with the benefit of hindsight, you can see this. At the time, was there any hesitation on your part when you were getting ready to take this on that you were?
No. There's never any hesitation when you're young. There shouldn't be, because you can only fail. That's all. You know. Yes, everybody hopes to be a winner, but we all can fail, and you've got to learn how to fail to be successful.
With so many actors, I think, are, or frequently are, concerned about preserving that essential likability of not wanting to compromise that persona.
That's fair. And that's like an actor who joins show business and wants to stay in a soap opera for 30 years because it's a good living. That's not acting. That's just getting a job in a factory, day after day after day. No, that word I use, explore. Explore show business. That's what I meant. Some people join the acting community in the hope that they can get a job, so let's say in a soap opera, and they'll stay in that soap opera for 20 years. Now, if they want to do that, that's great. They'll become big names. Everybody will recognize them in the street. But for a lot of us, it's the challenge. We're being given this tree of that we can explore, and there are, as I keep saying, it's that showbiz tree, and it's got hundreds of various ways. You can be a director, a producer, a writer. You can learn a musical. You can do anything if you want it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. As I said, you can only fail. Then you get up, you dust yourself down, and you start all over again. And you've learned. You've learned perhaps never to do that again. So you move from that to something else, or you move and take something with you that you've learned from there, that you can incorporate later on, somewhere along the line, even if it's just a moment. But you've experienced that sort of moment before, so you know exactly how it should be played.
And I wonder if either after the National Health on Stage or after the film, did you start receiving different kinds of roles? Were there different offers coming in for you?
Different offers, yes, but I don't think it came about because of the National Health, because, as I said, I came to America and they hadn't seen the National Health over here. Actually, I saw it being done at the Circle in the Square Theatre over here.
Which I should think would be a difficult one to translate.
It was, because the guy playing Barnett walked on the stage and looked at the audience to do his first line, and he looked straight at me, and he'd seen me playing the part at the National Theatre, and he froze. It was literally, and then recovered, but his face went red. I thought, well, that's wonderful, how you do, but boy, and...
So you single-handedly ruined its run in New York. I would think
it didn't work in New York. It didn't work.
I would think it would be a difficult sell to.
Yes.
And I think I saw a New York Times review, which was a glowing review, but was from like 1979 or so.
Really?
So it was apparently quite a ways on that
Yes.
it found any kind of theatrical in New York, at least.
Yeah. Well, but this, we did get some rave reviews. I remember Frank Rich came to see it. So if you want to read that, you read that review. I think
This is of the stage production.
for the stage
Yeah.
production. Yes, that was the first. I'd never been reviewed by an American critic before. Then Clive Barnes was a big critic as well, and he became a friend later on. But it was Frank Rich who came over and came to see a matinee of it with all the old ladies, and gave us, meaning the show, one of the great reviews of all time. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose I just wondered because, I mean, I know you were certainly a known factor for the Carry On films, which are, of course, popular staples.
Yeah.
But this, I would think, to a casting agent would show a entirely different and slightly more malevolent side of you to
See,
explore.
people came along expecting the Jim Dale they see in the Carry On films, which is the clown, the idiot, you know, the duffer, the one who always falls down the stairs instead of, you know, walking down, doing all my own stunts and all that. So suddenly to see me doing a completely different role, yes, must have thrown them a little. No, then Frank Dunlop, we did a play. Frank then said, I'd like you to play this more serious role called The Burglar with Sean Phillips. And that was another thing that happened due to having played Barnett.
So this definitely helped you to pivot
That's right,
in a certain way.
But it's also nice to play challenging roles that are opposite to the one you last played. Let's do something different. Let's do a play where you're tap dancing in the next one. You know, you haven't tap danced since you were 11 years of age. Let's polish it up and do it. So I did The American Clock. And that was the story of somebody who was the head of a big organization who was also a great tap dancer, one of the top Irish tap dancers. And so he had a top hat and tails doing the routine in his office, dancing on. So things like that are always a challenge.
We've got the film running down here.
Yes, look at them. Wardrobe had a great department, a great time in this film. Look at those costumes.
So just by way of comparison, there's a sort of pantomime going on here for the stage production.
Yeah.
And you come out and give your kicker. That's how the stage production ends.
That's right.
Do you remember any conversation going on around changing the ending, or?
No, I don't. Peter said I had to change the ending. And you don't ask Riot, because he's the writer. He felt he had to change it. How do you go along with that?
Did you ever speak with him about his satisfaction or lack thereof with the finished result?
I think Peter was very pleased with it, the reality of it all, because don't forget, Peter was in a hospital like this. This is where he had the punctured lung. This is reality, and he was part of it for months and months. So we recreated the actual reality of the real hospital. And I think Peter couldn't have been more pleased.
Because you'd spoken of the fact that the Joe Egg film came as a disappointment to him.
Well, it had to, because they cut out the comedy. And it's a funny role. I mean, we did it with Stockard Channing. I say we. I mean, Stockard Channing and I did it. And the comedy came out. The comedy was really there. But after we'd played to 80,000 aficionados of New York theater, then it was the out-of-towners who saw they didn't want to come to see a play about a spastic child and a young couple trying to cope. But it was a very funny play.
And as we speak, you've just sold a pint of whiskey to a recovering alcoholic, like the total reprobate
as he has been doing all the time he's been in there.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
And I do love the detail of that that horribly oddly shaped basket.
It's lovely, isn't it? Terrible basket making. Queen Victoria. Mhm.
Was that a set department
That was
invention?
specially made. This is the ending now. He's seeing.
And that is the secret of the governing class. Secret of the royal family.
And the most contemptuous cigarette flick.
No, many of the royal family personally. No side of it. Regal bearing, yes.
Yeah.
Not the snobbery.
Sad.
Simple dignity.
And
Barnett
Opera-
would look at it as two patients leave, maybe two more arrive.
oh, we have to assume that Blakely's booze hound will be back
See,
soon
look
enough.
at this television acting from Lynn. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
I think you should consider the blonde coif again. I think it might be time to bring it back.
No, thank you.
And then
You can tell it's the 70s, can't you? Oh,
final moment of racial reconciliation. Well, this has indeed been a pleasure.
oh, it's been fun, hasn't it? Now I want to see the film. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, so how long has it been now?
It's we did.
You haven't seen this since its initial
I haven't
release.
seen this since 1973.
Good heavens.
Wow. Neither of my children, I don't think. So is it being re-released then?
It will indeed.
Good, how wonderful.
Mr. Jim Dale, it's been a great pleasure.
Oh, good. Thank you, and for you.
And thanks to all of those who have borne with us through this journey.
Who are still with us, hopefully. Yes.
Stay out of hospital.